to the Antioch Public Library's 100th Anniversary Radio Show podcast, brought to you by the 100th Anniversary Committee. Episode 6, with Library Director Jennifer Drinka and Board President Tom Hausman. So, welcome to the 100th Anniversary Radio Show podcast. My name is Brenda. I'm the head of the 100th Anniversary Committee. Today we have all the rest of the members of the 100th Year Anniversary Committee, as well as our library director and our library board president. So we're going to go around and introduce ourselves. Why don't we start with you?
I am Katie McNatt. If you enjoyed any of our cookies that we had over the past year or so, I'm responsible for those.
I'm Rachel Stein. I work in the children's department, and I wrote the scripts for all of our previous podcasts, and I starred in the first two.
I am Hillary Schneider. I am a page, and I helped with some research for those radio shows. I was also in the first one, and I also helped out with the 100th anniversary displays.
I'm Becky Jacobson. I am the head of marketing and communications. I played Miss Voss in 2 of the podcasts. My department created all of the graphics and graphic displays out on the veranda and about the library that enhanced the historical displays that were created by Hillary and by Rachel and other members on the board of this committee.
I'm Jennifer Drinka. I'm really proud to be our library director, only the 5th one in 100 years, and really proud of all that this committee has accomplished this year.
I'm Tom Hausman. I'm the Library Board of Trustees president. I was elected 14 years ago, and I have a couple more years left on the board. And very happy to be the president of this particular board, and glad that we hired Jennifer. Thank you.
All right, thank you everybody for coming. We are also missing one of our members, Dana, who did a lot of our graphics for the 100th anniversary. So we're missing her today. But why don't we get started with our first question here. Jennifer, can you tell us about your journey from patron to Antioch Library Director?
Yes, I grew up in Antioch and am the youngest of 9 children. We grew up without a lot of money, and so the library, the Antioch Library, was like a second home to me, and I'd come here. My mom would bring us here every week and really believed in the library, and I would bring home 2 big bags filled with books, and I would lay them out over my kitchen table and then put them in order and then sit and read, and I would read for about 12 hours a day. I would read to my doll. I just read, and it made me feel rich. Then in high school, the summer before my senior year, I started to work here as a children's page, and I was really motivated because as soon as I was only responsible for the children's materials, so as soon as they were all shelved, I could do display bulletin boards, help with programs, and special projects. I went on to work at the library on and off for about 5 years through college, and then I went and got my master's in library science, went out into the world, and came back to be our director in 2016.
Super interesting. I feel as if a lot of people start as pages and end up loving libraries and staying.
Yes, who in this room started as a page?
I know I started as a page.
There's a lot of hands going up.
Yeah. So it was Katie used to be a page, and then Hillary's a page.
There are at least 4 of us in this room that did get our starts as pages, yes.
Future library directors.
Careful. Watch where you point that one.
All right. So, Tom, what made you become the library board president?
Well, I was elected by my fellow members. Number one, I retired from teaching at Wilmot High School in 1996, and I devoted my entire retirement life to doing volunteer work. I've been with PM&L Theater for 51 years. I've been a member of the Rotary for about 16, 17 years. And the motto of the Rotary is service above self, and it's something I take very much to heart. And when I thought about running for any kind of a elected office, I thought, what office would fit me? And with my background of teaching English, speech, and drama at Wilmot, and being a part of PM&L Theater, I figured that being a member of a library board would be an important thing for me to do. My wife was the library director of Nippersink Library in Richmond for 20 years. And so it's all a part of, in a sense, my DNA. I was elected. This is my 4th term. I had only intended to run for 2 terms, but then I got suckered in. And then when Ann Kakaksit decided to not run again as board president, then I threw my hat in the ring, and my fellow board members elected me, and they elected me last spring for my 3rd time as president of the Library Board of Trustees. Hopefully this is my last one. It's been a good journey, and I've enjoyed being a part of this organization, and I'm going to leave it right there. Thank you.
Yeah, it is an interesting time to be part of the leadership here, especially with renovation coming up. So, Jennifer and Tom, how do you ensure positive library staff and board relations?
It's a really good question. I've worked at a lot of libraries, and I think that our staff and our board are both top-notch and all really care. So first of all, you have to have good, caring people. What I love about our library board is that they help out. I feel like they're very present, and I'm really excited. We've had a good board ever since I came on board, and our board right now in particular is always willing to lend a hand with anything. Right now we're doing an RFID conversion project, and some of the board members are actually helping with that. They're really instrumental with planning the groundbreaking ceremony and come to so many different meetings planning our building project. I think for library staff and board, I think the main contact point between the board and staff is me. I'm the board's one employee, and I have a really close relationship with Tom. I try to fill him in on everything I can think of, small things, big things, how I'm doing, how staff are doing. And during board meetings, I give updates on what's happening in the library and let them know some of the things that we want to celebrate about staff. And so I try to let the board know what's happening with staff. I think one thing I'd like to do better on is to let staff know what the board is doing. It can sometimes be a little bit of a mystery. You know, who are these people? Why are they doing this? That the board is volunteers. They don't get any money out of what they're doing, and they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart and really care. And I feel like that's something I'm trying to let staff know, is how much this board cares about our employees. You know, when it comes time to look at the budget and think about what we're doing, the staff is always top of the board's mind. And so I guess I just encourage staff to get to know who are your board members. And yeah, so I think things like this are exciting to bring our board in to communicate with staff and get to know you on a more close basis.
Yes, I second a lot of what Jennifer has just said. Part of good relations with staff is getting to know staff members. With over 50 members of the staff, it's not always easy. We do the best we can. As far as good relations with the staff, I have pushed every time I have been on this board and been a part of the compensation group, and I volunteer for that every year, because I feel that library staff members are well underpaid, and I would like to see that improved as much as possible. We, of course, are constrained by the tax dollars we get. This is not a business. in the sense that we try to make money. This is a business where we try to help our customers, who are the voters, and so we want to make sure that we have a adequate staff. We want to make sure that we have as well compensated as we can make them, and so those are the kind of things that I stress when have been on the board, and I will continue to do that when we select our committee. Next month, March. I will be on that committee.
Since the library is, in fact, an institution that deals just with the public, how do you think that our staff does in regards of providing for the public?
Number one, we make sure that we have people in all kinds of departments. We've added departments over the years. Becky here, is part of that public relations, and that's an important part of what we do. We want the public to know what's going on. I think it was like 4 summers ago we put out a survey of our patrons, and we used that to decide how we were going to do things in the future, and it was also a basis for our deciding to go ahead with making plans to renovate and expand the library facilities. From the things that were brought to us through that survey, it was a big help. And when we hired an architect, we made sure that our architects knew what our patrons wanted, and that it was not a wish list that we wanted, but a wish list that our patrons wanted.
I feel like our staff are just top of the heap. In that survey that Tom was referring to, it was one of the things we got marked the highest on was how our patrons feel about the customer service that we provide. That even with masks, you can tell smiling eyes, we're always eager to help people. And that's something really important for our library. Even in our building project, when we have self-checkouts, it's really important to note those are going to be an option, like a value-added service. It's not to replace people. It's super important to have people to help people. And so our staff are just really the best of anywhere I've ever worked, and I just see them always wanting to help people.
Yeah, that's a good thing to have for a public library.
Okay, I want to add something. When I first came to this library back in '75, I was treated not very well. It's like, why are you coming to this library? Why do you want to check this out? What do you mean? And so I stopped coming to this library, even though I was living here since 1975. And so then when they put the whole new edition on, people said you should go and see it. So I went and saw it, and I noticed a lot of changes, good changes. And one of the things I really liked about coming back to this library was the signs that said, "Please interrupt." It's just a nice signal to everybody that we are here to serve you. We're not here to serve ourselves. And I think that's extremely important, and I think this staff does a very good job of that. And I'm very pleased about that, and proud to be the president of the Board of Trustees. And in case somebody doesn't understand it, we have to be elected to the board, or we have to be appointed to the board. A couple of our members on this particular board have been appointed. Most of us on the board have been elected. And as Jennifer mentioned, we do not get compensated, other than coffee and donuts for meetings like this. So thank you. And I appreciate the extra effort and that they went through to do this for us this morning.
As a staff person, I'd just like to add to that a little bit. Working in marketing, I'm out in the community. I come and go from the back. I have the privilege of being able to remove myself from the floor and go out to the back. And a few years back, the library initiated a safety and behavior committee here with headed by Amy Blue, our head of adult references, and our deputy, thank you, and our deputy director. I was like, what is the title of that one right now? And she was dynamic in getting this going. And part of that provided some training for staff about how to work with the community. Obviously, we work with every aspect of the community, every age level, every demographic. They come and go from the library. At the height of things, over 10,000 people a month come through here. And that can get pretty wearing on staff that are on what we refer to as the front lines. That's the reference desk upstairs and downstairs, the circulation desk, even those pages that are out in the shelves putting things away, get asked questions or are have patrons come up to them with needs. And one of the things that I like that happened out of this is that staff were given permission back then to be able to take a moment. Past jobs I've had, we weren't able to do that. You're at your desk, you're there for the public, and you have had some either just not on your best for the day emotionally, or have had something that's happened. And a lot of workplaces just don't recognize that you can't give your all when you don't have your all to give at that particular moment. And I think we've all been there in jobs, at school, in our personal lives. And this Safety and Behavior Committee, and with the grace of our director, Jennifer, and the board, gave staff the permission to tap out to another staff person and be able to just go take a few moments to pull themselves together. And that just goes it's 100% being able to put yourself back in the mindset of giving your all to your community and to that patron that's coming up and talking to you. And it may be one of the best initiatives that was set forth. I know looking at the staff here, I think Hillary you've probably been here almost as long as I have. Three others of you would have come in after the initiation of that process, or of the Safety and Behavior Committee. I'm not sure.
What year did that happen? Because I think I came in 2013. That was when I.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's right. You were a page.
I was in fact a page. Yes.
I forgot about that. I keep thinking of you as coming in at Circ Desk, and I forgot about that. So that would have been shortly after Jennifer was hired. The Safety and Behavior Committee was formed right after the strategic plan, which is one of the first things that we did when she came on board, was to do that. But I know that there's been several staff over the years, these past few years, and especially since we've opened up the doors after COVID, that have just like the ability to say to another member of their department, I need to go take a few minutes. And it's okay for them to do that. So that's what I wanted to add to that for customer service.
I just want to add something to what Becky just said. I'm glad you mentioned it, because I think I can take that for granted that that's not a big deal. But I do remember when I started here, and when we started doing the Safety and Behavior Committee, Amy saying how important it was to let staff know that we have your back, and your best decision and your best approach at that moment, we're going to have your back, and that there is no right, there is no wrong, that we support you and we support each other. Mm-hmm. So it's easy to take that for granted, but I just think we have such a tremendous staff that work together, and I just hear laughter throughout the building and people excited about what they're doing, so it's so nice.
Mental health is just as important as physical health, and that's something that gets overlooked so much. It really should not.
The library has a long history of growth, community engagement, and anticipating the needs of its users. So what have you all done to keep those traditions alive?
Well, who was it who approached me? I think like Jennifer and Becky sort of approached me together, or like Becky recommended me to Jennifer, and then Jennifer approached me. It was something in that aspect. But they mentioned that the person who used to do like the history and the scrapbooking for the library was no longer doing it, and they had actually stopped doing it a few years prior before Jennifer approached me. And they said, would that be something that I would be interested in taking up? It was to put the scrapbooks together for the library. And I'm like, well, I can give it a try. Of course, there was like this 5 or 6 year gap between like where the last scrapbook ended and where I was picking up. So, I've been trying to find like articles and events to kind of fill that space, but more recently I have been able to put together a couple of miscellaneous books. I found a folder that had like a lot of old staff pictures there's a book for that. There's one that's from when I think that other one was from when Kathy Labuda retired. So there's an album for that. I currently have a couple books in the cabinet that are in progress. Has just different events that's, even though I may be working on a book for one event, I'm acquiring like information from others that I'm kind of putting the pages together for, so when it's time they can just be slid right on in.
Like I said earlier, I'm out in the community a lot, so over the years I've often brought bits and pieces of history back about the community. Most recently, in an effort to kind of say goodbye to the library as it is today, and to let people know more about the renderings and things that to come, the 100th Committee, and this was back in the fall, I want to say. There's been so much going on. We had a series of open houses, and the members of the 100th Committee poured through the scrapbooks. Brenda, Rachel, I think Katie did, and Hillary and myself, and everybody, every one of us did when I think about it. Dana Bukhari, that was mentioned earlier, my associate, she did a lot of the capturing of these on digital and got things together. Anyway, we basically pieced together what the 1970s library looked like through old photographs. Thank you to those that came before us to save those. And it was quite a task walking through with old photos, trying to kind of eyeball match them up to where the building was. There is a tell-all of the old 1970s library before the last edition. If you're at the circulation desk checking out books and you look to the west or towards the children's department, and the walls on the north and south side, there's this brown black metal piece that goes down both sides of the wall, and that is where the 1970s building began, or I should say the new building began, and where the 70s building ended. So that was kind of our jumping off point, and we walked through and matched these photos up and put them up, and then we did an open house. Oh, and I have to mention that we also had some help with this by some what we refer to as long timers here. They're all younger than me, but they're long timers here. Paula,
pages first, and they stayed here.
yes. Well, yes. With the exception of one, because Amy was never a page. Terry was never a page. So Amy Blue, again, the head of adult reference, our Terry, who is our circulation staff.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure people who come to the library a lot see her.
Yeah, everybody knows Terry. And Paula Williams, she's the head of IT, and Kim Morocco, who works back now in technical services. They've all got like 20-year tenure here at the library, and a couple of them plus that. So they were here when, several of them were here when it was just the 1970s building, to know what that looked like and know where things were, telling us where this person's desk was or that person's. So all of these were put together on boards, and we put them throughout the building, and then we did open houses where community members were able to come in, take a not a self-guided, but a guided tour led by, I wasn't here, I took vacation. That's why I don't remember when it was.
Yeah, we all went through like the old building, and we talked about, we had the people who have been here for a very long time talk about the old building and what it was like. Then we had a person come in and talk about the present building, and then of course what we're going to be doing in the future with our new extension.
Right, yeah. And I know during the 100th, the very start of that, we did a lot of social media, a lot of print posts out on the veranda of the past buildings and so forth. Just yesterday, myself and our business administrator, Kathy Diener, and then Jennifer joined us, met with Suzanne from Suzanne's Frames here in town to look at some of our historical artwork that will be remaining and for the public to view in the new library. She will be taking and working on these pieces, cleaning them, reframing them, getting them ready to pack them because they will go into storage for a short period of time. So making sure that these things are there for 100 years to come. One in particular that some people in this community know is there and really like is a aerial view. It's quite a long piece. It's 14 feet wide by 4, I think not quite a half feet high. It hangs in our now the Ann Kakasik boardroom on the main floor, and it has no protective covering on it. It will be moved from there, and other historical prints will go in there in the future, but this piece is going to be out where the public can see it more. So Suzanne is procuring she had a word for it, but a UV protective covering, a plexiglass that will be it will be encased in more or less, but she's going to delicately clean the entire piece, get the protective coating on there, get it packed so it can go into storage and be safe, and then it will be hanging in a main hallway where anybody can actually look at it. And that's basically what people like to do. They like to look at it and pick out where they played whenever they were younger, because I want to say the date on it dates back to the 1960s, 50s or 60s, somewhere around there. So yeah, we think about the history of the library in almost everything we do around here to make sure that we're documenting and keeping a history of what's happening.
Yeah, because a lot of those scrapbooks were instrumental in us doing research for these podcasts and all of that.
In addition to all of those things, one of the aspects that the children's department and teen departments are especially proud of with our community engagement is our school visits. I know that Brenda visits all of the high schools, and we're just getting back in the children's department because of COVID. We had to take some time off. We're getting back to our school visits. In fact, yesterday I was just at Grass Lakes Elementary, and the kids were fantastic. I was showing them how to use our library catalog and talking to them about some of the Illinois award-winning books. And they asked some of the best questions. In fact, one kid asked me what was the very first book that was ever put on the shelf in the library, which unfortunately I couldn't answer because the library is 100 years old, and that was not something we have a record of. But once I told them the library was 100 years old, they got very excited and they wanted to hear all about our history.
Yeah, I know that a lot of the school visits is super important for our growth because a lot of the times, especially talking to the high schoolers, like they don't know that some of the stuff that we do even exists. Like, for example, We've got the VR headsets you can check out. We've got so many different things that you can check out. It's not just books, though we all love books. It's also, movies, of course, and video games and telescopes and, hotspots, all things that are needed in the community and that are just fun for the community to use for free. Our high schoolers don't necessarily know that. A lot of the public may also not necessarily know that, but us reaching out to our particular group, for me, it's the teen, because I'm in the teen department. So we go out and we try and tell them all about all the great things the library does for them to use.
Thinking about the schools, something I'm really excited about is we are entering right now into an intergovernmental agreement with the high school district 117 and also working on one with District 34, so the elementary schools and middle school, to just enhance those relationships. And so there's a lot of stuff happening on different levels, and we have a good relationship. So it's neat that our staff are out there meeting with the teachers and the students, and that our administration is meeting with the superintendents. And so all different levels, we have this relationship. But the intergovernmental agreement is going to enable every teacher to get a library card. And in return, the high school, I could tell you right now, is going to let us use their auditorium for free. And they're going to have an activities bus that will bring students over here after school. And so we're working on a similar agreement with District 34. And so to have this mutual relationship that different governmental entities can work together.
Yeah, I know that talking to the school librarian over at Antioch High School, she says to her students, she's only open until school ends, but we're open until 9 o'clock. And the kids can come here to do their homework, for research, for fun. Any of the fun things that they can do, they can come here. And that's what I think we as a library have been trying very hard to continue to bring people in and to provide for them the things maybe that they can't have, or things to even just try out for fun. Anything else anybody else wants to say about that? Okay. So, speaking of library history, when was the library really founded? Is this actually the 100th anniversary?
I really want Brenda to answer this because she is the history maven who figured it out. So Brenda, can you tell us?
Yeah, okay. So we were under the assumption that 2021 was the 100th anniversary. So that was kind of just our assumption on the coming into it. But we really didn't have any information about the actual day, which I thought was particularly odd, because if it's the town's first library, you would think that they would have, especially, Antioch was a small town. It's still kind of small now, but way smaller back then. So I was like, why don't we have a newspaper clipping or something that says when the library was founded? So I went all through the Antioch newspapers, and unfortunately, 1920 is completely gone. Nobody has 1920. But looking through 1921 and 1922, I think I looked through every paper, going where the heck is this thing? Why don't we have it? Only to find out that it's actually 1922 that the library was founded. I think we just got confused because the library moved from place to place so quickly that we kind of assumed that 1922 date was the second place the library was, instead of Walter Chin's newspaper stand, when that kind of switch happened within 2 months of each other. So there is a newspaper clipping out there that says it was founded in...
Either way, it was May 1922.
Right.
When the Women's Club founded us.
Mm-hmm. And it was kind of almost right in front of our faces, because it's in one of the blue... it's in one of the scrapbooks. It's just that we all read it wrong. And then finally, when we were looking through it, we were like, oh, I think this is actually the day it was open. And we're like, oh, okay, well, we were wrong this entire time. Oops.
What was that in one of the women's club scrapbooks or one of our scrapbooks?
That was in one of our scrapbooks. I think it was the one that has all the newspaper clippings.
Okay.
It was in that one, but I think it was like we all kind of just read it incorrectly, and then reading it a couple of times more, we were like, wait a second.
Okay.
I think this is the actual first day of the entire library at Walter Chin's.
I thought you found that in the archives of the Women's Club minutes, because we have those here, correct? We have all of their minutes dating way back, and I thought that's where you found it.
No, so we actually don't. The minutes for the Women's Club starts in 1945 that we have, not in 20.
Okay.
So we have
Learning history right here this minute.
Yeah.
I am.
So yeah, because I had actually a women's club person come in going like, hey, do you have the minutes? But we didn't have them that early.
Okay.
So who knows what happened to those? So if you have if you're going through somebody's closet and you find minutes, bring them to the library.
And something really cool about working at a library and about history is that it's a living thing. When we know more, we share it. At first, when I heard this, I thought, oh no, because we'd been celebrating with all the cookies in 2021, and I thought, oh no, our 100th anniversary, we've put such a big push. But now we're in 2022, and we're just going to keep on celebrating. And
It was just the lead up. It was a lead up to the big day.
Yeah, I have, and this might go towards another question here, but on that, with this pandemic that started in 2020, the marketing department had already begun working on aspects of the 100th anniversary to have graphics together, so on and so forth. And the original plan was to have a Let's Begin the Celebration event in January of 2021. But we couldn't because we were all on lockdown still and we couldn't have large groups of things. And so things, it went from one month to the next month. And then we physically began the celebration in May of 1921. So theoretically, we will be completing that celebration now in May of 1922.
So we just started celebrating in the 99th anniversary.
Right.
Date.
And in May of 1922, we very likely will have less building to celebrate in. So it all kind of washes out. But a neat thing to learn.
I just want to say, if any of us live to be 100, we need to celebrate for a full year. I think the library's quite a girl, and we're celebrating her 100th year for a whole year.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, in speaking about the 100th anniversary, so we should probably go through all the things we've done throughout the year to celebrate the 100th anniversary. We've already talked about a few of them. So Becky mentioned the tours of the buildings to say goodbye to the old buildings. I think we also talked about the cookies, but why don't I pass it to Katie, because she was the one who was completely in charge of the entire cookie project.
I want to know why we did cookies.
Oh,
I know why, but I want you to tell them why. Sorry.
I'm a cookie monster, that's why.
I can find notes.
Well, to be perfectly fair, Dana did go and get all of the recipes for the ones that okay, so I'm gonna back that up a little bit. So starting out with communicating with the bakeries, one of the first questions we had was whether or not they would use some of the recipes that we'd managed to gather. Some bakeries were cool with that, some were not, because they wanted to be able to accurately judge yield. Perfectly fair. So on that particular level, I used the recipes that Dana had so graciously found and sent those out. Again, the first couple we actually had the recipes for. The later ones, since they were not okay with using our recipes and we had to kind of make compromises, we did not have the recipes available. Sorry.
And these were all recipes that came from the different decades of where the library were, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, so the whole premise of like what kind of cookies was what was the popular cookies of whatever year that the building either moved or got bigger. So each month we had a different cookie based off of, like, for example, 1921 we had like oatmeal cookies, and because that was one of the popular cookies of that particular year. And that oatmeal cookie recipe, as you know, Katie was saying, Dana actually found in our archives. It was a recipe from somebody in the community. It might not have been from 1920, but it was from our community. And that's what I think all 4 of the first cookie recipes were all recipes from Antioch community members, which I think was really cool.
And don't forget, we got the idea to put out cookies because when the Women's Club was founding the library, they needed to raise some money. And one of the things that they did is they would have biscuit and cookie sales. And we were like, oh, that's a good idea. We should get some biscuits or cookies and have them in the library for people to have. And then we started talking about it, and we said, oh, well, let's involve all the local bakeries, and we'll get them to help us. And it became a community-wide event.
Yeah, we should probably talk about all the bakeries that we've gone through. So every bakery that we had making cookies are all Antioch bakeries.
Yeah, so the first couple that we got cookies from were Sweet Discoveries and Little Bean. And then the last 2 were Latte Cafe and
Love and Oven.
Love and Oven. That's right. It's been a while. Thank God.
Yeah, sorry to disappoint. We don't have any more cookies now. They're all gone. But yeah, so if you liked any of the cookies that we had out, those are the bakeries you should check out and get stuff from.
Yeah, so overall, it was coordinating 1,000 cookies a month was no easy task. So Katie coordinated that. So we did it for 8 months. So we had 8,000 cookies.
Yep. Yeah, it was amazing. Katie did such an amazing job with that. So some of the other things that we did for the 100th year anniversary is, of course, this podcast. So this is the 6th and last episode of this little podcast. And of course, if you have been listening, it's been a kind of like going through each of the leaders of the library and speaking as if it was in their time. Usually we had them talking about something important that was happening, and they wanted to let the public know about it. So, for example, we had the Women's Club talking about the library, and Miss Mary Stanley talking as the first librarian. Then we had Marion Rigby, and then Betty Lou with I think it was going from the Little White House to 1970s building, because I feel like she was the person who was in charge when that happened. And then, of course, the renovation and expansion with Kathy Labuda. And then now today we're talking with our current lib director.
Yeah, I do. This isn't necessarily how we celebrated the anniversary, but a big thing that impacted my life over the last year was learning about our history and connecting with people. And so Ainsley from the Lakes Region Historical Society was really instrumental in helping get me information and pictures of the original Women's Club founders, the real people that started us. And then some of our first librarians never married or had children, and so it was challenging to find their families. But I located Mary Stanley's great niece out in California, spoke with her. She sent me pictures of Mary, drawings that she'd done, letters she'd written, and then I connected with Marion Rigby, who later on became Marion Hardin. I connected with her family out in Pennsylvania, and then connected with Betty Lou Williams, one of her best friends, Diane Bush. She was the high school librarian in North Carolina. And so finding these people and hearing about the history really brought it to life. And I also visited the graveyard and did some grave rubbings of some of their graves, and just feel so honored to be part of this group of women who have led our library.
They're here in the Antioch Cemetery, correct?
Mary Stanley and Betty Lou Williams are within eyeshot of each other. Kathy Labuda has told me she has a spot reserved in the graveyard on the hill. And so I think that's where I want to go. Marion Hardin, I don't know where she's buried, but I think if there's ghosts, I want to be one in that cemetery and talk to these ladies. I mean, they're my rock stars.
Yeah, they're very, very interesting people. All the people who had anything to do with like the library, the people we concentrated on, very interesting people, and they're all women, which I find super exciting because even I feel like all throughout history, right? It's like usually men have been in the big positions of power in institutions like this, but we had ladies all throughout, which is really cool. For the anniversary, we also have a free little library that is going to be going out soon, so I'll pass it to Rachel, and she will tell you all about that.
Absolutely. This was another thing that we just kind of mentioned in passing when we were first brainstorming our ideas for this 100th anniversary. We're like, oh, well, we should get some brochures and put them together, and we could put the cookies somewhere. And we needed space to put things out and to announce our 100th anniversary and to commemorate it. So I think someone suggested that we get one of those little free libraries. It may have been me, and I went and I did the research, and it turns out it's very easy to become a conservator of a little free library. You just have to promise to take care of it. And then we got in communication with the people who own the land where Walter Chin's used to be. That is Casa Ruiz, thank you. Casa Ruiz now. And in May, we are hoping to have an event where we're going to put the little free library into the ground in front of Casa Ruiz so that you can come and learn all about our library history, and you can get some books there as well.
Where is this Casa Luis? I have no idea.
It's on Main Street in Antioch.
It's the old bank building that used to be the vault and
Vault
yeah.
building.
And that was a big journey too, because we knew the original address, but it didn't make sense because the address was like at the bank. But we know we weren't in the bank, we were in a newspaper stand. And so with Ainsley's help, we figured out this newspaper stand was in an old wooden building in the parking lot next to Casa Ruiz, which had been the vault and had been a bank as well. And so this parking lot, there's no building there anymore, but there's a little planting area that we're hoping to put our little free library in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one of the things that we kind of one of the problems that we had with the 100th year anniversary is COVID. We couldn't have anything traditional, like we couldn't have a big party really because of COVID. So we had to try and figure out a way to celebrate the 100th year anniversary without it, making people all gather in one place for very long periods of time, which is why we came up with all these much smaller kind of passive ways to celebrate, so that we were able to, tell everybody that this was happening, that we were turning 100, and then also just a fun way to get people to engage with the library and library history. I figured, with the cookies, it's like, well, they would have had food if we had a party. Might as well give them food throughout the year, right?
Patrons like food, yes.
Celebrations of any kind usually revolve around food. Weddings, funerals, whatever. Food always is the thing that is the magnet that pulls everybody together. So
I know that one of the things that we were planning, it was during the summer when COVID cases were down and like it looked like we could have bigger parties and things. We were going to do like a cool it was a masquerade or something like that during Halloween.
This was actually the event that we first thought we would do in January of 2021. Then we set our sights for the summer, and then it moved to October, and then we decided we will do the event probably, I don't know. It'll happen eventually. But yes, it was meant to be a type of a masquerade event. We've not lost hope on it. We were looking to theme it like the 1920s a little speakeasy type event. We've actually talked to the Women's Club about this, and they kind of enjoyed the idea of it. So it may happen yet. Keep an eye on the newsletter. Watch the website and social media, because if it's going to happen, I'm going to be shouting about it out there because I've had to postpone it so many times.
Yeah, it was one of the things I had intended to mention earlier, how the board is trying to reach out to the public, and I wrote the first letter from the board for the newsletter, about a year ago, and I've assigned or asked people to volunteer that to do, we do 4 of these newsletters a year, so getting to know who your board members are, and I know that one of the things I also started when I first got on this board was a meet the board night, just before elections, because before that there was nothing. So it's important that people know who's in charge of the library.
I know that we had problems, of course, as the 100th year anniversary committee with COVID. And I know the library has also had to face challenges when it comes to COVID and how we handle it. So, Jennifer, did you want to talk about how we handled COVID?
Well, I'll never forget. I believe it was March 13th, 2020, Friday the 13th.
Yep.
When the library, we decided that day, I called Tom, I got the management team together, and we decided we are closing the library. And we went home, and we did not reopen our doors for 2 or 3 months. We had to really quickly pivot to equip staff to work from home. We moved our programs to online. We were really ahead of the curve compared to a lot of libraries. We jumped right in and just didn't miss a beat with helping people and with, augmenting our digital collection. And then when we could get back in the building to do curbside pickup, even when our doors couldn't open, and we added plexiglass shields, we gave staff masks, we required people to wear masks in the building, we increased our cleaning, so we did quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. I know that, me as part of the teen department and working with programming, we did have to do quite a bit, there were a lot of changes that had to happen with a lot of our programs. For example, instead of having our crafts and things in the building, we had to have take and makes, and I had to do film videos and put kits together, and that was weird at first. With the take and makes and the videos, we've noticed we've had a lot more people sign up for this online program than, let's say, would come in to do the craft. So it did really, in some cases, COVID showed us or made us see that certain ways that we were doing things might not have been the best way we could have done them. So in that way, COVID showed us that online programming isn't so bad, and it is very helpful for people when they can kind of do it on their own time.
I'm going to go back on Jennifer's comment about the day, Friday, March 13th of 2020. Management staff were all alerted to what was coming. The country in general knew what was coming. Took a little longer to reach the Antioch area. And while I know that a previous team meeting, we thought we would have a couple more weeks, we were at least semi-prepared for the possibility. So going back on history, one of the first things that the marketing department did was grab the iPads and hit video and record Jennifer doing a message to the community about our closure that was pushed out to a couple of the Antioch group pages, and to the village page, I think the township page as well. I did a walkthrough of the building at the end of the day as management staff were walking out of the building with files and such, because we had no idea. We thought 2 weeks. We thought it might be 2 weeks then. We didn't know that it would be, several months before we were back. And we were off and on, we tried to stay separated back then. So we never had all the management staff in the building at the same time. I didn't see my own associate for 6 months, I think, because we were working alternate. Probably the same for you, Brenda. Carol, your manager would be here and you wouldn't be. Same for all of you. So there is video now added to our archives during that year, because, like Brenda said, we started using it. In the first weeks of it, the community was very into information. They just wanted information. We were having hits on our Facebook and Instagram pages in the thousands and 10,000s, and that was something we had never experienced before. And so we were trying to give them any kind of entertainment through the library. We were forwarding things from I'm sure some people might have remembered, or you hear, the penguins from the Shed Aquarium taking trips about the city. I would repost those, just anything to keep them active, to coming back to our social media for information, because that's what we had access to. That's what they had access to. And then the idea that we had so many people paying attention on the social media, and the need to be able to continue to get information about the library services out to them, we started trying to provide program on there, which we had not, like Brenda had said, ever really done before. And one of the first things we did was, like I said, the penguins, sharing things from various other institutes. And then we looked at what was then a spring newsletter that was never going to happen, of some dynamic programs that everything was ready to launch. So one of the first things I think we put out as a take and make was the
butterfly feeders.
Correct, the butterfly feeders. And that was going to be a program, but Rachel took all the equipment and she put that together and got those out. I don't remember, did you do a video?
I did. I put it together as one of the STEM projects. It may have been under Mad Scientist. It may have just been a general STEM video that we put kids out with.
Okay. And then, so what happened, and this literally happened within the 2 weeks, I want to say program was kind of up and running within 6 days or so of us shutting our doors. And Rachel doing some of these STEM programs was one of the very first, followed by her manager, the head of the children's department, Nikki Cogswell, and she started doing story time specifically. We had Kay, one of our Cirque staff, started doing some of the other garden programs that had been on there. We released mason jars that were herb gardens. That was going to be a program. Those was another thing we put out as a take and make. And people were coming by and picking them up, like Brenda said, with our curbside. So we'd package them. They'd be out there. The Cirque staff would make sure that the people would get them. And then we started getting desperate because we had people asking. And I started doing a cooking show. And then Dana, our associate, started doing a cooking show. And I really can't remember which program it was that you did, Rachel, but we talked Sam, our IT associate, into he did a radio. He did a radio video podcast called the Not the Tonight Show.
Not tonight,
Yeah, the Not, and it was, he'd been doing it personally on his own to just his own Facebook group. And I saw it and went, oh, he has to do this. The moment he did that, other staff came forward. Katie started doing an online with Zoom, a gaming program, Jackbox. Brenda's programs began to pick up. Sarah from the children's department started doing hers. And it was kind of like, if Sam's going to go out there and do an entire show with a guest and music and sing and put himself out there, staff really came forward. Then Kay started doing actual video demonstrations, and the rest is kind of history. We now have, and I'm so, and I've told the management staff this several times, I am constantly surprised by what our staff can do. The sheer girth of the amount of virtual program right now is well beyond where I ever imagined it was going to go, and it's an initiative to continue that online presence for those. Many comments came in that there are patrons that look forward to those. We had that are unable to get to the library on a regular basis. So they are now able to enjoy program, adult program or even children's programming that prior to didn't come to program because they either didn't have a way to get here, physically unable to get here, or they had work constraints, and they can go back and replay these when they have time to do it. And it has connected us in a way that we previously were unable to connect with our patrons. And I'm getting emotional now, so I'll stop. So I guess that's a big thank you to all of those staff that came out there.
Admittedly, the Jackbox things started out as more staff-oriented morale boosts, like during lockdown, and gradually became a, hey, would you be interested in running this for the teens? Which, unfortunately, we didn't have enough people sign up to keep that going, which it would have been nice had, people signed up, but it was still fun to run and give people a little bit of relaxation in uncertain times.
Yeah, this is just getting me to think back too. Like, I remember when we first closed, we were doing was it on Fridays, like a happy hour online Zoom for people to get together, and that went strong for several months. And our business manager, Kathy Diener, was constantly coming up with ways to interact with staff and to get staff to share little bits of information about themselves, just fun things to keep us connected. And so it's a testament to the strength of our staff, too, that we stayed as a cohesive team, even when we were at home and throughout all of this. And then it just launched us into reopening and launched us into this building project. So we can handle anything.
Yes, we can. All right, so we're going to pivot topics here. So Jennifer, how is the ENIAC library different from some of the other libraries in the area or nationwide? How about all over the world?
Well, we happen to be the best.
I mean, other than us being the best.
Yeah, other than that. Well, I know when our library first opened, we were considered like the jewel of the county, that we were considered the best library in the whole county. And I think with our building project, we're kind of preparing ourselves for that position again. But I think that we're the perfect size. We have right now we're down to about maybe 45 staff, with staff who have retired or left. We haven't filled positions with COVID, but we're going to be starting to fill things as things open up more and more. But we're the perfect size to be creative and agile and to be able to do things. When you get to be too big of a library, like let's say 100 staff, there's so many layers to get through to approve things. Where here, our library, people can just try things. And we're not so small that we don't have the resources. So we have different departments, different people that can help. And we're also a standalone library. instead of a consortium. And I've worked at libraries that are consortiums. When you're in that, it's nice, you share resources, you share a catalog, you automatically place a hold on something that comes from any other library, but it limits your creativity. So our technical services staff, when working with our catalog, can tailor things to our community. We tailor our collection to our community, so we always have things available for people. One thing I think I love to tell people about is we offer more teen programs and have more teens come to our programs than any other library in the county. We are by far not the largest library in the county, but we have a huge teen presence. And so our statistics, just how many people come through the door, how many things check out, how many people come to our programs, is really high. Higher on every metric than we could expect it to be. But the teen programs are something that's a super strength. So I'm excited about our new teen space.
Yeah, I'm excited about that one too.
The fact that the collection is very much so patron-based is probably why we've got, like, 6 of the newest Patterson book every time a new one pops out.
And we offer something that not every library has. We have our Teen Advisory Board, where we allow members of the community who are teenagers to come in and tell us about the programs that they would like to see and the books that they would like us to offer. And that allows them to have a voice in what's going on in the community and in the library.
Yeah, I know that, like, in today's, times, a lot of kids are interested in things going on in the community, and the library board is one way to get them to be involved and to have a voice in their community, in the library, and have things that they want to do available to them. And then we also then know, oh, okay, you like this thing, let's do this thing then. Yeah, going back to our library and how big it is, and I know that when I was at Cirque, I would get people that would come up and go, "Wow, you have like this amazing library. Your library is like so big. It has so many things in it." And a lot of the other libraries around here, I mean, they are all generally around the same size, but because we're not in a consortium, we have a bigger variety of things that people can just come in and grab.
Absolutely.
So, this is probably something that's been a question that's being asked to all libraries everywhere for a while now. So, why do we even need a library? Don't we have Google?
I think we probably all want to chime in on this. We feel passionately.
Me next.
Okay. They say Google can give you a million answers, a librarian can give you the right one. And so we still are really strong with information. We don't know everything, but we know how to find everything. We can get you anything you need. And furthermore, I think I want to let Tom Hausman tell you about how we're a community center, because he likes to talk about that.
I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago I went down to Alsip for a meeting of library presidents in the area. And one of the people I met was Rick, who's our major architect for our big project. But anyway, and one of the things he talked about was that a library shouldn't be playing catch up. It should be looking ahead and setting the trends. And I think a lot of ways we are setting trends. And that's important. There is no community center in Antioch. There's no one place you can go where everybody can go as a part of a center, except the library. I think it was 2 years ago the Tribune ran an article about where everybody can go to get information or entertainment. And the American public said the library. They didn't say, a movie house or a theater or anything else. They said the library. So we're trying as much as we can with our design plans to make this as much a community center as possible. So hence having a fireplace and coffee, which we were roundly criticized for doing, But I'm glad we're doing it because not everybody has a fire.
That's very true. People, even though that's a thing that we've been criticized about, you do hear people saying, like, hey, I wish we had a place to sit down and just be comfortable. And we're providing that.
Yeah. And adding more conference rooms, extending or making larger the IDE room, all that is a part of bringing people in, having the workspace studio, developing the teen center, the business section, expanding the children's library to more early education. These are all things that bring people in a centralized way. With the whole COVID thing, I think we became even more of a community center because so many other things were closed. It's a way of bringing people together, and the more we can bring people together, I think the better off the society will be.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to have a place for people to gather that doesn't have like the expectation of you spending money in that area, which is one of the things like people might say, oh, you can go to coffee shops, you can do this or that. But, there is an expectation when you go to those places that you purchase something there. And here you can just hang out and just be in here. And you don't have to do anything. There is no expectation of you when you come to the library to do a certain thing,
With Tom mentioning, it's a community center, and yes, there's no expectations when you come and utilize it. In stepping back on how much the library is depended upon here during those early days of COVID, and I'm gonna go back there. That the sense of community, we didn't realize how much it was even attached to the building at times. And a comment came up, and I don't remember at what week this was, from our one of our IT staff about the library cameras on the exterior of the building. They trip, or some of them are on all the time, but they can tell, bandwidth, how often they're actually filming and getting things. And so we looked into it and realized that in those early days, the number of people that didn't have Wi-Fi, that still needed to access their email to get lessons for their kids if they didn't have it at home and hadn't been hooked up for that yet through the school. We literally had almost like wagon trains of cars in our parking lot of mothers, parents, guardians, and the kids accessing the Wi-Fi. So our Wi-Fi, we had it remain open. Early, we were asked to close it so that we wouldn't have large groups of people, but later was realized through the Better Together initiative that when we expressed that this was going on, that they were looking to connect to the library, that they then got it so that we could reopen our Wi-Fi and keep it open so that could happen. So we had people coming and they were hearing our message, that there's things on the library website, there's stuff, but they couldn't download anything. Same thing goes with people that needed to charge stuff. We do have electrical outlets on the outside of our building, and we had people in the front and in the back plugging in to charge some of those phones and things. This would be some of our more transient community members that just didn't have that ability to get into a restaurant that they might have done that in, or another building in the past. But going back to the Google question, I love nothing more than to have somebody say to me that they don't need my services. They do not need the services at the library. because they have Google, or you can get anything online. Because I like to respond by saying, like what? What do you get online? Oh, well, I have Netflix and I have this and I download all my books from Amazon, or I do, whatever. That's all good and fine. And I usually tell them, well, you can do all of that from the library.
For free.
You do support the library through your taxes, and why would you spend more if you're already provided that service, and you could more than cash in on that by utilizing the library? And they look at me like I have a third eye, and then I launch into that kind of elevator speech of, if you have a smart TV, you can upload several of the apps and access movies directly with your library card from those apps. Thousands and thousands are available to you. Anything you can find on Amazon or Netflix, you're going to be able to find through the library. If you don't have that, check out that Roku. You mentioned that earlier. Netflix, Disney Plus, ESPN, what else is on there? Then our apps are on there as well. And generally, I leave a lot of people kind of wide-eyed and speechless because they've never gotten that message, and they just don't realize how much is there. And as Jennifer said, you can find 1,000 answers on Google, but you'll find the right one from a librarian. And the wealth that you gain by utilizing those little, how many numbers on a library card, is insurmountable whenever you really start looking into it.
If you ever want to hear someone wax poetic about any of our apps or anything like that, just either visit the Circ desk or one of the reference desks and ask about them, because we will. It will happen.
One other thing that's so cool about the library that Google can't provide you is we're totally unbiased. We do not sell advertisements. We are here for anybody and everybody. Every philosophy, history, idea, culture, religion lives peacefully together on our shelves. And we will answer any question you have, unbiased. Our collection, we have both sides of every issue, and we do not limit what you can access at all. And so anything you want to learn, we have it here. My sister's a kindergarten teacher, and her parents sometimes tell her, well, we just buy my kids books. We don't need to go to the library. And she said, you can never buy the number of books that you can get from the library, because we not only have what we have on our shelves, but we have access to the entire country through interlibrary loan. So anything you want to access, we will get it for you.
So now that, if you ever want to talk about any of the resources that we have, like Katie said, you can talk to any staff. They'll wax poetic about all the things that we are able to provide for you. You could also go onto our website under our, I believe it's like the research tab, where you can go in and look at all of the different services that we have, from classes to like ebooks, audiobooks, music, ancestry databases. All of that is there for you to access. Just call us or email us or text us or whatever if you have any questions whatsoever. Now, though, we should talk about what probably everyone is wondering, and that's about the renovation. So, Jennifer and Tom, why did you decide to do a renovation?
Well, I'll tell you, I think part of it started with that survey we did a couple summers ago. And then my going to this meeting in Ep.6 of board presidents. And a lot of my thinking went back even further than those two things. Because when I first got on the board, this part of the building was all fairly new. But then the years went by, okay, and you could start seeing the deterioration of things. And I was always told that we could always go up. The building was designed to have another floor. So it would be the basement, the main floor, and then a second floor. Well, we found out when we decided to go to renovate and to expand that no, we can't go up. Because if we gone up, it would cost us many millions more to be able to build the structure on top of there that you could even hold the floor up there. So the only places we could expand were to the east and to the portico out front. But anyway, it became my baby that I came to the meeting, I think it was in June, like 3 years ago, and I said, I would like to form a committee to check the feasibility of expanding and renovating. And as the president of the board, I cannot make motions. So when I entertain motions, that means I want another one of the board members to make that motion. And somebody did. It was seconded. We discussed it. We decided to form the feasibility committee. After 3 months, the feasibility committee became, we are going to renovate and expand. And we've had several chairpersons since then. Our first order of business then was to get an architect. And then from picking the architect, then we had to do all the kind of research about how we get on the ballot and that sort of thing. And so it was in 2020, right? Yeah. In July of 2020, the members of the board voted to go for referendum. Becky Masick and I are the only two board members that are still on the board from that. So we went ahead and we got it on the ballot, and we found out that we could not, as board members, or the staff could not, ask people to vote yes, or could not tell people to vote no. We had to remain completely neutral. We could give information, but we could not tell people or ask people to vote a certain way. So we had to form an outside committee and let them do that kind of legwork. And we asked Ann Kasich, who had been the library president before me, if she would head it up, and she agreed to it as long as she had someone as a co-chair, and that was Angie Zalatoris. And so a lot of people then formed on that committee, and then they really got the thing going. And then the architects got the signs going. We put signs up all over the place. And we squeaked through on November 2020 by 8 votes. We were challenged, but the challenge fell short. As many votes, more votes there were equal number of votes, more votes yes. So it remained roughly the same. So we passed it by 8 votes, but it took a couple of months to get all that cleared up. And then we were able to go ahead with selling the bonds, which we sold in a half of a day, almost $10 million in bonds, and it's been jumping through various legal hoops since then.
Thank you, Tom. So, Jennifer, what parts of the building do you think made you realize that we needed to do this renovation and this expansion?
Well, I think our furniture was a big component. Going back to that 2017 survey, there were 5 things that came out of that survey. One was people wanted more access to new books. They wanted more access to digital materials, a better website, and more knowledge of what was happening at the library. We spent 2 years focusing on those first 4 things, which were things we thought, we can do that, and we were very successful at it. But the 5th thing was more comfortable spaces and furniture in the library. And we thought, well, that's something we can't do with existing funds. And so our furniture was a big push for it. Also, our children's department currently doesn't really have anywhere for parents to sit and gather, and very little space for children to play and explore. We have no teen area. We have a teen collection, but no space for these teens who come in by the droves.
Yep, we only have 2 little shelves in this one little corner.
And we just got a bench.
Yes, and we have 1 bench.
And so those were some of the things, but a big part of it was just the aging infrastructure of the building. Maybe not quite a quarter of the budget is going to be spent on just upgrades that had to happen anyway. On our HVAC system, our roof, the roof over the 1970 building is from 1970.
Yep, I remember there were times where we had to have buckets out because the roof was leaking.
Yes, and so we knew we had to do something, and we wanted and needed to go into the future with what people were needing. And so the more study rooms and to try to meet that need.
I know I get this question a lot, which is, when are we starting construction?
March 1st is the groundbreaking. So right now, we're recording this in mid-February. The groundbreaking is right around the corner. March 2nd is when things start to move in the building. You're going to see some changes. And March 3rd is when the construction fences go up and equipment arrives. And right after that, you're going to start to see a big hole get dug out east.
Yeah, a lot of things have already been done. It's not that we have not been doing anything, and we had, as I mentioned earlier, we had to jump through a whole bunch of legal hoops and get permissions from fire departments, police departments, the village, various things, so that we're in compliance with all the codes and state codes, and all this stuff is done behind the scenes. So we're glad that we can finally have the groundbreaking ceremony on March 1st and move forward, and we will be doing the changeover in 3 phases. I think it's this section of the library is phase 1, and then the center section is phase 2, and then the children's area, and I think the staff in the back is phase 3.
Yeah, so Jennifer, do you want to go into a little bit more detail about how the process of the construction, like what's going to go on with the building? I had a patron recently ask me if we were going to be open. So, you mind telling us about that?
Sure. So we plan to be open almost the whole time throughout construction. So it could be a little noisy, a little bit chaotic, but we plan to be open as much as possible. There'll be some days when the gas line is getting upgraded, when the electricity has to be down, when the water's down, when we'll have to be closed. And for some of these major moves, think about moving over 100,000 items. That weigh, I figured it out the other day, I don't know, 50 tons. There's going to be some days we need to close.
More than that.
Was it?
Yeah,
a lot of elephants. I added up. 80 tons. They've got to be moved safely. But like Tom was saying, that first phase will be March through May of 2022 of this year, and that'll be digging the hole for the addition, building out that framework, putting in the structural steel. The next phase will be from June through October, and that will be renovating the entire center part of the library, the current eastern portion. And then November through May of 2023 will be the final phase. We'll be renovating the western 1970 part of the building. And so throughout all of this, staff are going to be shuffling around. At one point, I like to call it the tiny library. This summer, the summer of 2022, we are going to be existing in only the 1970 portion of the building, which is taken up about half now with staff spaces. We'll be operating out of 1 desk, where we now operate out of 4. So the circulation desk, the adult department, children's department, teen department will all be working out of 1 tiny desk.
No, I just wanted to say something for the public that to be able to get involved in is that as the renovation begins and as we move through it, the construction company has stated that they're going to provide windows into the process. They're going to provide us with some windows where people can see through the fencing to see what's going on outside. when they start working inside, especially whenever they close off most of the upstairs area, they will have plexiglass windows where when you come into the library, you'll be able to look in and see what's going on in that construction area as it progresses. Another thing that we'll have coming up, and again, just I'll put signage out and try and get that information out, but there is going to be an I-beam that will be inserted into the new construction, and I believe that I-beam will be available the day of the installation of the little free library in March, or in May, I'm sorry. And the idea is that we will be inviting the public to come and sign it, date it, whatever, before it's installed. And then there'll be a couple other little things too. We have a couple walls that will be going down that we will likely give the children and the teens a fun little project to do before those walls come down. So stay tuned for those things.
And one of the things I was concerned about was when we use that front portico for the children's library, what happens to all those bricks that have people's names on them? So they're all going to be dug up, and we're hopefully they'll be used in some kind of a path that will go on the west side of the building. And there may be a project where we sell some other stepping stones or plaques along the wall. One of the things that, and I really want to stress this because it bugged me for a long time. This new part of the building, what do we call it? The year 2000 when it was built?
Yeah, I think it was finished in 2002. Mm-hmm.
This was not built with referendum money. The board simply, because it had the right to, sell bonds to pay for all this. And we've been paying through the nose and out of our operating funds.
For 20 years.
For 20 years. We finally paid it all off about a year ago. So we have now money in our operating funds for other important things that we didn't have before. With the referendum, passing the referendum, everybody's tax bill will go up, the average tax bill will go up $50 a year. By going through referendum, rather than simply the board saying, well, we're going to do this. And I was somewhat upset that we had done that, and that how much were we paying a year?
Probably a little over $300,000 a year. Out of our budget had been kind of historically about $2 million, so that much of our budget each year was being spent on paying off bonds on a 20-year-old building project.
That's a lot of money over a long period of time.
Right. So it's very exciting the operating money is now available for us to operate the library.
Yeah, and then the referendum monies and stuff pretty much for the public.
Every one of those pennies, it has to be spent on the building project.
I'll strike all this.
Yeah, and I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure the thing with the renovation though too. It was very difficult, I think, for you guys to do do the referendum is what I mean, I think, right? Because you are taxing people, and that just automatically, people don't like that.
Yeah, I'd love to tell you a little bit about the referendum, the stats I have. Just to get it down for history, that we went for referendum November 2020, which was a presidential election, a very historic election, and we were right in the height of COVID. And so what was really interesting, the board decided to go during the presidential election because we get an accurate read of what our community wanted. If you go in a more off-season election, a smaller election, you get a couple thousand to vote. You don't know. You never really know, is this what the community wanted? But we wanted to know, what do they really want? And so I just have some information. So about 13,000 people voted, and this was unprecedented because normally most people vote on election day. In this election, I totaled it up. 30% of people voted on election day. 37% did early voting. 32% did vote by mail. And 1% were late arriving vote by mail and provisional, which means they wanted to double check what they needed a second set of eyes. And so we were watching these numbers every day as they changed. And at first, it looked like we lost the referendum. Oh, well, people were calling me to say, I'm sorry it didn't go through. Maybe next time. I'm like, wait.
We even made it into, was it Rails?
American Libraries, which is a national magazine, reported that we lost the referendum. And I called and I said, hey, wait a minute. We did not.
We're not done yet. Yeah.
And so the numbers weren't finalized until I went back to look. It felt like it was months, but it was only November 19th that Tom and I went to the county courthouse to get that certification that the numbers passed. And then it would be another couple of months. We had an election or a challenge to the count, and we did this recount where every single ballot was looked through and run through a machine again. It's very interesting to be a part of, but we passed it.
Yeah, I know that staff was kind of on edge the entire time when that was where we were waiting and counting and looking.
Everyone's asking, what happened with the referendum? What happened with the referendum? Oh, we're still counting. We'll let you know as soon as we have an answer.
Right. So there'd never been another election like it, with that many waiting for the ballots to come in the mail. And it came down to, it really did, historically, it came down to 8 votes. So it showed every person's vote matters. Every vote counts, which is really cool.
Right. The thing is, there were a number of referenda on that ballot, and ours was the only one in the county that passed. So,
I think people know how valuable we are.
Yeah, that was, I think, the thing that made us happiest was knowing that this community cares about what happens here. So,
and it was difficult at that time. I wholeheartedly agreed to the board's decision because we wouldn't have gotten, as Tom said, the same numbers showing up. So had it passed in a smaller election, I think many more would have been much more upset that we had done it that way, and it would have been a long time before we could have done it. So we really didn't have an option wanting to have everybody's input in it. But some of you might have been privy to this. There were patrons in this community that did come in and admit to voting no on the referendum because of their finances, that they would be happy however it came down. And that really humbled me that we had so many that love and utilize the library, but in their own good, they and that they admitted to us that or felt they needed to tell us to say, I'm so sorry, but I couldn't, and I'll be happy however it boils down, but that this is what I felt I needed to do, and have since come in to say that they're glad they've loved seeing the renderings and the other things that are going to happen here. But it was pretty eye-opening to be here in this day and time for our library and to this Antioch community, and to see how they processed it all. So I look forward to the next step.
You can find renderings and stuff like that.
Okay, so Becky, would you like to talk about where where the public could look for more information about the renovation?
Oh, sure. On our website, the homepage, apld.info. There's actual a little button. You can just tap it. It's on the right-hand side on the homepage. We update it. It's been some slow updating. Like Tom said, there was a lot of red tape things that had to take place. So while it didn't seem like a lot was going on, a lot was going on. But new renderings will be coming up probably fairly soon. Some pictures will start to happen. And that's the best place to go. Once it's there, the staff can talk about it and guide you there if you need to. Another thing to look for is your quarterly newsletter. The spring one coming up will have a letter from Paul Hedich, one of our newer board members, about the process. Jennifer speaks about the process. There will be some pictures in there about some things that have happened over the past year. So that's another good place to look. And keep your eye out for a new employee. His name is William Durr. People call him Bill. Yeah, that's Bill Durr. And he will be appearing at some events, and you'll be seeing some announcements from him on our social media. So he's kind of our hard hat guy in the know about what's going on around here.
Well,
Yeah, I'm just very excited to be part of the library at this time in our history, and very moved by everybody that's part of this whole, it's like a movement. And everything we've talked about here today, we've covered 100 years of history and maybe 100 years into the future. And just really honored to be part of this really wild ride with all of you, and that everybody's holding on and staying positive. And it's just so interesting to be thinking about our deep history and our deep future all at the same time, and running the library at this moment during COVID and everything with all of you is a big deal. So really proud of our library and proud of everything that's happening.
yeah, definitely a super exciting time to be a part of the library. All right, so thank you all so much for listening, and I hope you found this very interesting. Again, like Becky said, if you want more information on the renovation project as well as the 100-year history and anything like that, you can go onto our website. There are tabs where you can go and find that information. This podcast was brought to you by the Antioch Public Library District. This program was planned and executed by the 100th Anniversary Committee. Those involved are Rachel Stein, Jennifer Drinka, Katie McNair, Brenda Martinez, Anna Bukhari, Hillary Schneider, and Becky Jacobson. Thank you so much for listening.